Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Leon County DEC Candidate Forum for Tallahassee County Commission District 1 election. My name is Kim Ross. I was born and raised in Tallahassee. I moved away for 5 years, but came back when I had kids 24 years ago. In addition to running the nonprofit Rethink Energy Florida, I also serve on the board of my neighborhood association, and I'm active in my Unitarian Universalist Church. I agreed to moderate this forum because I believe in educating the voters. I believe in democracy. I'm a proud Democrat, and I also believe in embracing the diversity of opinions and people within our party. I will say that my participation in this event is not in any way an endorsement of any candidate or party by the nonprofit that I run. Rather, I am participating on my own time because of my love for democracy and local government and my appreciation for those who seek to and serve in it. As David just said, we do have scattered thunderstorms forecast this afternoon. If due to weather our Zoom feed is lost and one of us loses our connection, we will bring the candidates and moderator back together at a later date to finish up. We'll make a recording of the entire candidate forum available on the Leon Dems Facebook page and the Leon County Democratic Party YouTube channel. So keep your fingers crossed. We have a packed agenda today, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's please keep this forum cordial and respectful. As such, candidates, please keep your comments about your own positions and not about your opponents. I'm looking forward to learning more about your plans for our community. First up, we will allow for 2-minute introductory comments from the candidates. We'll go by alphabetical order of last names. So first up will be Terrance Barber, then Donna Cotterell, and then Bill Proctor. Terrance, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, hey, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to share this platform in order to spread this message of change. My name is Terrance L. Barber, candidate for Leon County Commission District 1. I'm a lifelong resident of Leon County. My family predominantly resides in the greater Griffin Heights, Frenchtown area, but I've been a long time resident of the South Side. Growing up in this community, I can say that I've been protected, neglected, respected, and even corrected right here in this community. Some of the things that I've done in recent years, I sit on the board of the Leon County Federal Credit Union. I'm on the board of the TCC Foundation, the Office of Economic Vitality, membership director for the Big Bend Minority Chamber of Commerce. I've created a platform for Black, Brown, and minority businesses called Working Class Wednesday, where we help smaller businesses gain access to education and capital. I truly believe that some of the biggest issues that this community faces are, of course, poverty, crime, and housing. And one of the best things we can do for the communities that suffer the most is create economic infrastructure, whereas we can support small businesses within these communities, and also get rid of the stigma that Black neighborhoods shouldn't be inhabited by more affluent folks. And I think that we create opportunities to work, live, and play all across this county equally, then we won't suffer so much in certain districts. So my name is Terrance L. Barber. Thank you so much for having me today. Looking forward to further dialogue.
All right, thank you, Terrance. Up next is Donna Cotterell.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Pearl Cotterell. I come from 5 generations in this Big Bend area on my dad's side. My great-grandfather, Mingo Bradwell, had 17 children with Sarah Bradwell. My grandmother, my father's mother, actually had 15 children. My grandfather had 12 children with my grandmother. So I'm a Thomas, and my father was the first police chief of Midway, and Chief Thomas also was the third person to desegregate the buses here in 1956, December 1956. Very proud of that achievement on my dad's side. My mom, on my mom's side, Prince Griffin, my great-great-grandfather owned property in Leon County, Gadsden County, and eventually came back to Leon County, where my family still has property in Prince Griffin's name. Believe it or not, that property was impacted by Blueprint. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the changes that are created by Blueprint is because of the way my family was impacted by Blueprint. My mom decided to stay up north. My father was in the military. So out of the 7 of us, 5 of us were born in Massachusetts, 2 here in Florida. And after my dad passed away in January of 2013, I decided to move to Tallahassee and had a couple of interesting affirmations. I was actually in Bali, Indonesia, after I decided to move to Tallahassee, and met a man from Tallahassee, which reminded me that, yes, I'm coming to Tallahassee. But even prior to moving, I got a second affirmation when I was in Massachusetts doing a workshop and presenting. And at the workshop I was presenting at, there was a man from Tallahassee, believe it or not. So I've lived here for 8 years now, 8 years this weekend to be exact. I came here for a family reunion in 2014 and never left. We actually have our family reunion coming up again in 2 weeks on the Bradwell side. So I'm a Bradwell,
Wrap up your
Wallace,
thoughts.
I'm a Watson, and I am Donna Cotterell, candidate for County Commission District 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bill Proctor.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Hi, my name is Bill Proctor. I'm grateful for the citizens of District 1 who've allowed me to serve for a period of over 2 decades representing the good citizens of District 1. I am a Proctor, descendant of Antonio Proctor. Our family's roots are traced in this community from the late 1700s. I probably have more people in the graveyard, actually, than many have relatives on top of the ground. That's the truth. Both my mother's family, the Gardner family, which is a Meridian Road variety, have been here for eons. Let me just say that I've graduated from Howard University. I've graduated from Howard University, undergraduate and School of Law. And like Ms. Ross, our host today, she loves democracy. Not only do I love democracy, but I actually teach democracy. And since 1986, spring of 86, I've had the pleasure of working in the Florida University Political Science Department. I teach constitutional law. I love democracy and I teach it. Also, it's of note to me, I have 4 children, 1 grandson. I graduated from FAMU High, where I went from 1st through 12th grade. My father, late father, William Proctor, was a school teacher. He sold insurance and he worked in housing. And my mother, a librarian at FAMU High for 36 years, phenomenal lady. So I'm the son of a librarian, and I have my own curiosities about many things thanks to her. And then
All right, go ahead and wrap up your thoughts, sir.
Pardon?
We've gotten to 2 minutes, so go ahead and wrap up your thoughts.
Okay. I can stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to all of our candidates. And as a reminder to the candidates during the question period, you will have 2 minutes to respond to the questions. And I will be doing my best to keep time, and will notify you when your time is up. And thank you for respecting already the time limits. The people of Tallahassee deserve to learn as much as possible about the issues impacting their county. It is okay to finish your comments in under 2 minutes. Please don't feel pressured to take every answer to the limit. We are planning a question and answer period at the end of the program. So for our viewers, members of the audience, please type your questions in the chat box, and we have co-hosts reading them. Well, again, we'll have that time for audience questions at the end of the program. We're monitoring those questions, and then once we get to that end of the program, if you want to ask your question live, we welcome you to raise your hand function, to use the raise hand function which is found at the bottom of your screen in the reactions button. Push reactions and the option to raise your hand will come up. The co-host will prompt me and let me know who has a question, and I'll call your name and you will be unmuted. So now we'll move into the Q&A portion of our program. Again, 2 minutes to respond to each question, and I'll be keeping time. We'll begin alphabetically by first name and rotate who goes first from there. So our first topic is affordable housing for the low and extremely low income neighbors. And so our first respondent will be Commissioner Bill Proctor. Commissioner Proctor, you have put forth On the topic of affordable housing, the idea that we should have the banks that the city and the county and the school district and the university use set aside money for housing. How would this work, and why would banks give money for affordable housing?
That there ought to be quid pro quo. The Community Reinvestment Act, the CRA of 1977, requires banks to reinvest in communities in proportion to the direct deposits that they receive from communities. So this is not a benevolent quest or call. This is the law, the 1977 CRA Act. We've not pressed our banks to be greater productive citizens and to go outside of the ranges of what typically is a beacon score or credit rating score and those kinds of things. This is the public's money that we invest from the school board, county commission, city commission, all of this money. And we can leverage or have that conversation with our banks as to what can be put in trust account for affordable housing. We well know that at the beginning of the year, since the beginning of the year, there are 15 million Americans, according to the New York Times, who no longer qualify for a home mortgage. So we must find respectable ways for people to continue to live with dignity and to live safely and to live in habitable spaces. And I believe that there is a new opportunity if only we would press this direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Donna Cotterell, you said that the county should look at tiny homes and container homes to address the issue of affordable housing. How would that work? Where would these homes go? How would they be paid for? Who would live in them? And how would rent be determined? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's a great question because some people aren't even familiar with the container homes. I'll start there. Container homes are the trailer beds that would be on trains. And what they do with some of these old trailer beds is they convert them with a door and HVAC unit, and they're $6,500. So we have small footprints in Frenchtown as well as on the south side and in District 1, several vacant lots that we could put a container home on there for a family to be able to afford a home, either on air property or land purchased through various programs that we have here in the city. So it makes it affordable for someone living on a low income to have their own home. And then tiny homes, we've seen Kearney Center start that on the west side of the city. And it's a great way for some folks to live, but if you are disabled or elderly, some of them have stairs. So it can be difficult for them to live in a tiny home that has stairs. But for families who don't have those inhibitions, then same thing. We can use these vacant lots that are dotted all across the south side and Frenchtown to put them on those footprint lots. And then we have homes, beautiful homes that were called shotgun shacks or saddlebag houses. And some of them could be fixed up, painted, roofs, new roofs put on them, new siding, and make them affordable versus tearing them down and starting all over again. So there are lots of options for affordable, low income and extremely low income housing right here in District 1.
Thank you. And Terrance, Barber, you said the county is not doing enough to solve the affordable housing crisis. So what specifically do you think the county should do about affordable housing?
That's a great question. First, I think that we have to look at the trend that the city and county governments are going. Right now, we have, if affordable housing and even low-income housing it is a necessity for the county. As we can look around, as of recently, the Orange Avenue housing community was torn down, which was a low-income housing, which will be replaced by median income affordable housing. I had Ms. Tiffany Hill on my radio show yesterday talking to me about some of the displacement over there that people in the community, some that were had different ailments or barriers that kept them from being able to move into some of the new housing in which they're now forced to move into. Right now, Swakoko Village over off of Houghton Street is up for sale. We have to look at where we're spending our money. If we are tearing down, and I understand that the housing authority across this country is going away from what's called public housing, but where are our most vulnerable people then left to live? Our homeless population is forever growing. As I was out canvassing this morning, and when I'm canvassing in the Griffin Heights and Bond neighborhoods, the multitude of vacant homes within these neighborhoods, I think, is an atrocity. I think that people will live where they are able to work, live, and play. And the lack of activity and the lack of infrastructure in these communities, coupled with the lack of programming. I wouldn't put all the brunt of this on the banks to come up with this magic bag of money. I think that what they do well in Alachua County in helping folks be able to own homes, I think we can learn a lot from. We create slush funds for so many different things in this community. And I think that until we address affordable housing, and until we address who we ask what's affordable, because a lot of folks who work every day, all day at certain jobs still aren't able to afford affordable housing. Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you so much. Let's see. So we'll move on to the topic of trees. And we'll have Donna Cotterell go first. Do you support the preservation of canopy roads? Why or why not? And what changes would you support to strengthen the tree protection generally, not just for canopy roads?
I strongly support canopy roads. That's one of our natural, beauties here in Tallahassee, and something that people admire and come from miles around just to travel our canopy roads. I would suggest we strategically and surgically remove limbs that may be in the way of power lines, but lately I've seen where the trees are just hacked apart and they're no longer beautiful, but they become an eyesore because they're so damaged. And I suggest that the contractors that we work with, we make sure that they're trained in tree preservation, not just tree trimming, because trees can be impacted if they're trimmed away too much. And I think the canopy roads that we have, if we can highlight them, we want tourists, we want folks to come to Tallahassee. Our canopy roads are certainly an attraction for tourists to come and drive down those beautiful roads. So I think we should do everything we can to preserve our canopy roads.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Bill Proctor, in the past, you've said you don't support the preservation of canopy roads and that the county spends too much on trees. Is that still your position? And if so, why? What county spending on trees do you think is unwarranted? And are there any changes to strengthen tree protection that you would support?
Well, Kim, frankly, I believe that all trees are beautiful. I believe that all trees are sacred. I believe that all trees come from God, whether they're by the side of the road or over in an open field or in our front yard or in our backyard. All of them trees are equal to me. But the fact that it sits by a road heading into the northeast of Tallahassee does not give it any extra status to me. What's foremost about a road is its capacity to move people to populated areas. Let's talk about Meridian. Let's talk about Centerville and Miccosukee in particular, as well as Old Bainbridge Road. There's a critical need to widen those roads as population has become more intense. Those are essentially the great trees aside the roads that people are talking about. And I don't get overburdened worrying about the trees. I want safe passage, and we need roadways to allow for safety and facilitate a faster speed to get up Centerville, Miccosukee. And I think that with the Amazon Center, it's going to become more condensed, and those trees, God allows them to regrow, to regenerate. So when you take a tree down, I understand all of that, but I put public safety ahead of a tree standing by the road, and all trees are sacred. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I do apologize to Terrance Barber. I went out of order there, but go ahead, Terrance Barber. Do you support the preservation of canopy roads? Why or why not? And what changes would you support to strengthen tree protection generally, not just for canopy roads?
Of course, I think that our illustrious canopy roads are one of the characteristics. We don't have a lot of palm trees up here in North Florida, here in Tallahassee, sometimes categorized as South Georgia. So I think that we must, the preservation of our canopy roads, I think for that fact in itself is something that we should pay attention to. I also would like to echo that safe passage for me is also at the top of my radar. I think that whenever safe travel is impeded, I think that we must use that same sort of energy. When we talk about Old Bainbridge Road, there was money allocated for the widening of Old Bainbridge Road once before. Old Bainbridge Road has been hazardous since I can remember. Old Bainbridge Road, there has been no widening, no development of Old Bainbridge Road. There have been several accidents over the course of years, but nothing has been done. When money was allocated for road widening in District 1, then subsequently that money was then allocated somewhere else. I use case in point, I was riding down Benton Road through Benton Hills the other day. They just did a wonderful job of widening and the beautification of Benton Road. And I think that's one of the main focal points that I would like to shed light on, is that throughout this county, there are just certain areas that get it and some don't. So and when it comes to District 1, I don't think that we should continue to put off the necessities of a lot of folks travel up and down Old Bainbridge Road. There's student housing all up and down. There's also a lot of residential traffic on that 2-lane, just no sidewalks road. There's a long stretch of it that becomes very narrow. And I think that there has to be some sort of common ground when it comes to the preservation of our trees that characterize the beauty of this county, and also the preservation of life and the safety of our individuals. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we'll turn now to the treatment of minority juveniles. And we'll go back to you, Terrance. The school to prison pipeline funnels students out of school and into the streets and/or the juvenile correction systems, and then into prisons. This is especially apparent when it comes to examining first how minorities are disciplined in school compared to their Caucasian peers, and second, how they are treated by law enforcement. How serious of a problem do you think this is, and what do you think the county commission should do about it?
That's another great question. Happy to answer. Right now, this is a data-driven community, and we must first look at the data. People tell untruths, but data is consistent. Right now, Leon County has one of the highest, if not the highest. I have to double check it because it sometimes changes, but juvenile incarceration rates in the state of Florida. This is the capital city of the state of Florida, and per capita, we lock up more babies. And digging deeper and looking at even the anatomy of the homicide that our Sheriff Walt McNeil recently published, most of those babies that we incarcerate look just like my children. And I think that I truly believe that if a flower doesn't grow, if a flower won't bloom, you don't fix the flower, you fix the environment in which the flower is growing. I think that we're expecting beautiful flowers to bud out of concrete jungles that we've created and left for our inner city, Black and brown, most specifically District 1 children. So I think that until we put our money where our mouth is and put programming in the school system, put programming at JDC where children are being incarcerated, put some sort of avenue and programming that helps the most vulnerable and at-risk students and youth in our community. And I think that then, only then, I mean, if the children are our future, how does our future look if we have the highest juvenile incarceration rate in the state of Florida? That's my answer.
Thank you. And Commissioner Bill Proctor, we'll go to you next. How serious a problem is the school to prison pipeline, and what do you think the county commission should do about it?
Well, it's a very serious issue, but I need to tell you that wherever white people are, they overpunish Black people. I don't care where it is. We get fired, we get denied pay increases. Our children are charged as adults 4 times the rate of white people in this community. The number of expulsions, the number of suspensions. I mean, when a people have stayed in slavery from 1619 to 1865 for 246 years, and in the aftermath, their complete struggle has been for freedom and equality. That mindset that Black people get punished it permeates everything. It permeates all phases of life. And just on the other day, Thursday, after all these years since 1619, or however old the court, 233 years, a Black woman arises after all the beds being made and cooking and all kinds of stuff. We're just getting a Black woman on the Supreme Court. So you want to see how slow the stoppage of punishing and over punishing Black folk, it's everywhere. And I don't think there's anything that the county commission can do to stop it. Thank you.
Donna Cotterell, same question for you. How serious a problem is the school to prison pipeline, and what do you think the county commission should do about it?
Thank you for the question, Kim. As a former Title I teacher and also an education coordinator at Gadsden Reentry Center, I've seen both ends of the spectrum. I've actually had students that I had in middle school who were caught doing felonious crimes at 16 and 17 years old, who are being tried as adults. And it's a tragedy that impacts our community, our families. There are grown men, believe it or not, in prison who don't have a GED, don't have a high school diploma, but have said to me, I've gotten this far, what do I need it for? And they don't see the correlation between having a first grade reading score to the fact that they've ended up in prison several times. And I have young ones who think that they're going to make it in the pros, so they don't need their education because they're going to get an agent. And I said, well, how are you going to sign a contract that you can't read and you don't understand? Well, my agent will take care of it. How are you going to trust your agent? And so the reality is we need to train up our children early and that teach them to read by the 3rd grade, because up into 3rd grade, kids are learning to read. After 3rd grade, kids are reading to learn. So if they haven't learned to read by 3rd grade, they're already behind. And then once they get into middle school, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and they're so far behind, it impacts their math scores. We can't do a math problem that has words and solve the mathematical equation without being able to read and understand. So I want to start as early as we can with literacy programs, and even bringing in folks who I call celebrities, our community leaders, to read to our children. It's so important to hear the words, to hear the intonations, and act them out. As a third person, I used to love to read to my kids, but do it in a dramatic way that draws them in, that makes them want to read. I think that's part of the solution.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, we turn now to the topic of Doe Campbell. Commissioner Proctor, you voted twice with a majority for Blueprint to give $20 million of economic development money to FSU for stadium repairs. You indicated that giving money to FSU for the football stadium is economic development for African-American FSU football players who go on to play for the NFL. Does paying for FSU stadium repairs promote economic development that helps the low-income residents of District 1? And if you think it does, please explain.
Thank you very much. I believe a college education extended to a young man is economic development. That first and foremost is economic development. Florida State extends scholarships to males like in no other program at its university than the door which is open at football. when you, I saw in the New York Times this week that 300,000 people have left New York since COVID. And it's the caliber of people who have left in terms of their income. Believe it or not, the 1%, the top 1% earners of New York pays 41% of the taxes raised for the city. When you are helping people who write the big checks and do the great things for a program that hires African-American boys mostly to come get an education, I support that. So I done voted for it once or twice. I'm very pleased with the kids who are there. They come from a District 1, if not Leon counties. They come from a District 1. And I'm concerned about who will marry my daughters, my nieces, the young ladies who are coming up who are African-American. There are not many boys in college. So this is a pipeline that Florida State has been generous about over years. And I think that when you educate a Black male and what they're able to do from work done to Corey Simon running for office, Peter Boulware, he hires a whole bunch of people. Peter Boulware puts more than $27 million into the local economy as the owner of the Toyota dealership. That's the kind of ripple effect that when you allow these young men to come forward, it just happens. So thank you for the question. I'm well satisfied, well pleased with my support of the Doak Campbell Stadium.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cotterell, you said it is morally obscene for FSU to get luxury seating for its stadium while in the same zip code, that people are suffering. Could you explain why you think giving $20 million to FSU won't help the people of District 1? And what would you have liked the money being given to FSU to be used for instead?
Great question. We voted to have this regressive tax forced on us the second time in 2014. For the first time, I believe it was 2020. And it was to help our communities. It was for economic stimulation within our communities. FSU sits in the poorest zip code in the state. To have a university that gets $1 billion budget every year, sitting in the poorest zip code and feeling entitled to take our regressive penny tax to fix up a stadium that's only going to impact a certain few of the population, to me, it's just downright rude and disrespectful to the folks who need and voted for our communities to do better. I think about the small businesses. If we had created loans, not even just giving away money, but had loans for small businesses, we could have had $10,000. We could have given loans, $10,000 loans to 2,000 businesses with that $20 million. I imagine the impact would have rippled out and the dollar would circulate within the community. Whereas a lot of times that money that comes through the stadium, it goes right back out of the community. It doesn't get reinvested in the community. We need to invest and reinvest, not just in 32304, but our entire county is suffering and could have used the $20 million. So thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Barber, you said that the decision to give $20 million to FSU was financially irresponsible. Please explain your analysis, and can you describe what you would have supported as a financially responsible way to spend $20 million?
Okay, just to put things into perspective, right around the same time that we were voting on the endowment or donation to the Florida State football program. Now, keep in mind, in 2018, I was privy to be a booster chairperson. I worked for the car dealership across the street from Mr. Boulware's multi-million-dollar dealership. And the owner there is a big-time Florida State booster. So I was able to go down and see how the boosters raise money at Florida State. I sat on those boards. I flew by private jet to Pittsburgh with now NBA star Terrance and the FSU basketball team. I also want to interject that if we're speaking on economic development, around that same time, everyone's been to visit it to the Doubletree Hotel. The Doubletree Hotel went up for sale. And I think it was by divine intervention that we had this opportunity to see what 23 the DoubleTree Hotel and the rooftop lounge sold for a whopping $23 million. Less money than we just gave to the Florida State football stadium to do renovations. We could have purchased the entire DoubleTree Hotel, employed all those people. You could have solved homelessness almost with the purchase of the DoubleTree Hotel. You could have fixed poverty. And then you look at things like the facts. And of course, I know that we want to keep, I'm going to run an above board campaign, but I do also read and I look at the facts. And when you see current commissioners in the midst of this monumental vote that will subsequently affect our most vulnerable business, which are Black, brown, and women-owned businesses in this county. When you see current sitting commissioners texting back and forth, they subpoenaed the text messages from the vote. When you see our current commissioners texting football coaches at Florida State, congratulating them that, yes, we are about to give you the money. When you see that, you don't see them talking to little poor Black boys and Black mothers and fathers. And
Mr. Barber, go ahead and wrap it up.
And I'll wrap it up now. I'm sorry, I get passionate, but that's that on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to something that I'm personally very passionate about: climate justice. Like many other issues, climate change has a disproportionate impact on communities of color. For instance, with extreme heat, numerous reports find vulnerable communities are less likely to have access to heat coping tools, such as air conditioning, and during extreme heat events. They're also less likely to have access to a car to get to a cooler area or a government-sponsored cooling station. That's just one of many issues around climate justice. So Ms. Cotterell, first, how can the county do more to address these injustices in our communities?
I think we need to look at ordinances. We need to look at how developers are able to purchase land without first doing a study to see how that land is going to be impacted by development. And then we need to look downstream, because we have Lake Munson and the Wakulla Springs that are being impacted by the runoff and creating toxicity. I mean, if you like to fish or hunt or go crabbing like my family used to do in these local waterways, it's going to have an effect. And the toxicity, it's not safe for humans or animals. And we have to be very careful and mindful of that when we allow these developers to come in and clear cut forests, especially forests that have the red clay that can affect what's built on top of it. And if we're not, careful, we can wipe out some of our most precious resources, whether they are the wildlife, animals, plants, and things that we are fortunate to have in our area could be totally wiped out, and our waterways and our forests are being directly impacted by the overdevelopment. So we should, as a county, look at our ordinances, our policies and procedures to tighten up how things are done in using the land and developing the land.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barber, how can the county do more to address climate injustices in our community?
Climate injustices in our community. I think that when we look at programs such as some of our revitalization programs that we're doing, most specifically in Griffin Heights, Greater Bond neighborhood, Frenchtown, we have to look at the market in which we serve. And a lot of those programs, although great programs, they are geared towards the actual home owner. And subsequently do some through, of course, family and friends who live in the area, and also just walking and talking in community meetings and just hearing the voices of the community. Some of the things that we get right sometimes go wrong. And I say that because a lot of those folks are renting. And if we're going to implement programs to help folks, the person that owns that property may live upstate, may live in Massachusetts, may live in North Carolina. And right now, they aren't eligible for that funding to help upgrade. And then a lot of times the owners are telling them that if we do the upgrades, we're going to price you out. So it's like you're left to deal with the woes of, climate change and not having proper AC and heating, or subsequently being forced into a situation that you can't afford. So I think that when we do programming and we do allocate funding, we need to have more actual community input in order to make sure that people are getting exactly what they need and just not what we think they need.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Bill Proctor, how can the county do more to address climate injustices in our communities?
The county has a goal of our 2030 to cut our greenhouse carbon emissions into our universe, and to cut it by, I believe, 30%. And I believe, don't quote me hard on those numbers, but we do have a big lofty goal. You saw this week, Ms. Ross, you saw the U.S. Supreme Court just on Friday said that the Environmental Protection Agency has absolutely no regulatory authority over the emissions. And your question is nearly a false question when the U.S. Supreme Court has deemed that the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, operating for 50 years as a regulatory body over emissions, but it has no power now. This is a very difficult and a false question. But I'll go on to say that I do support our fleet having electric cars by 2030. I can support that Waste Management and Waste Pro should have electric vehicles picking up our trash. I will support our need to move from waste to energy programs, and I will definitely be working hard to push that. You should know that I fought the biomass effort a few years ago when President T.K. Weatherall and his wife were trying to bring a company called BG&E out of Atlanta down here over off of Lake Bradford Road. And I stood up and fought like tigers fight bears, and we were able to defeat that from occurring. What we do have here is that the South Side is forced into a septic tank bondage, and I cannot get these pipes from the city. And I don't know where you live at, Ms. Ross, but you possibly don't live with the sewer plant in your face and the airplane drippings, the airplane noise, the airplane pollution, and all the bad things of which we're forced into noise and stink bondage down here in the South Side. Yeah. But I need the Democratic Party to step up, to man up, and look out for the post side with respect to these injustices that we have experienced, and it's called environmental racism.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Proctor. And I'll just mention, I don't think it's a false question, but I think it is a more difficult question as a result of the Supreme Court's things, and also just that those things that you just mentioned at the end there are also part of climate and environmental injustices. Absolutely. So let's move on to the topic of crime, which will probably, and then we'll probably be moving to our audience questions. So as a reminder to our audience, put your questions of any sort in the chat. But on the topic of crime, and we'll go first to Mr. Barber, murders and violent crime occur among all races and economic levels, but some parts of Leon County, many in District 1, seem particularly devastated by crime. What can we do to cut the toll of shootings and other violence?
Another great question. As it pertains to District 1, I think that we have to create, first of all, I'd like to interject that the crime that we see in our community is symptomatic of the poverty that we see in our community, the lack of activity. I was down at King of Diamonds Auto Spa. I'll just use this as an example on Thursday, getting a vehicle detailed. And I was speaking to 3 young Black men who work there, and shout out to Henry Lynn and Diamond Lynn, the owners of that business in District 1 on Orange Avenue. And I was speaking to them. 2 were 16 years old, 1 was 17 years old. And I was questioning them about, how they came to work there and was it their first job? They all agreed that, yes, this was their first job. And I asked, well, how did you end up here? And they said, because we were walking to the store and Mr. Lynn offered us a job. I think that the same way that Mr. Lynn is able to create opportunity, and that's what I call economic drivers within our community to help curb poverty and subsequently will help curb crime. We need activity in our communities. We need infrastructure in place to support Black-owned businesses in Black communities. My body of work has been very specific to creating that sort of economy within our communities. And I think that until we create pathways for our youth and also destigmatize other post-secondary pathways such as trades and other things that we could be indoctrinated into our school system, until we do away with the stigma of this being a college town, and if you don't go to school and you don't go to college, some of these kids have decided they are going to be criminals the day they decide they're not going to college. Because a lot of times as adults and as community leaders, we preach that and drive that into their head so much that we don't see that the damage that we're leaving behind our children that choose other post-secondary pathways. So I think that until we solve the economy and put opportunity within our communities, we will continuously suffer from the symptoms thereof. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Proctor, in your 26 years on the county commission, what steps have you supported to cut the toll of shootings and other violence? And what more would you support to cut the toll of shootings and other violence?
Most satisfied with the effort and complimentary, not only satisfied, but complimentary to being a supporter, a vocal supporter, as well as voting resources to Sheriff Walt McNeil's new commission on men and boys. And Sheriff McNeil looked at a body of 5 years of crime, isolating the areas it was occurring, trying to take a deep dive and understanding the catalyst for those criminal behaviors. I strongly disagree with Mr. Barber's assessment that he indicates that the moment a kid decides in our community not to go to college is the very day that they decide to become a criminal. I strongly disagree, and there are too many men who've lived over the generations who, majority of Black men didn't go to college, but the majority of them didn't become criminals. So I don't quite fathom his approach to that. Nevertheless, Sheriff McNeil is going to lead us forward. There's research, there's methodology, there's science. He has the FSU Department of Criminal Justice, and I'm really excited about the program. We've never done this before. Of course, the courts are harsher on their sentencing. They're following these guidelines to the hilt. I was in court on Wednesday. 17-year-old boy had committed a few burglaries. He served a grown man's sentence of 10 years. He came out for 2 days, was driving without a license. He was there vacillating on to sign a 30-year plea deal. He served 10 years. He got arrested on the second day of being out, and Judge Marsh is down there about to throw the boy's life away. That's the kind of stuff that the Democratic Party and all of us need to be looking at. How do you do the lives, the real stories of where I work in the courthouse, and the kind of stories that come out week after week, and these judges are just indifferent to the potential of lives.
Thank you. Ms. Cotterell, we'll go to you in just a second. I do want to give Mr. Barber a chance to respond and maybe clarify his statements.
Okay, and of course,
30 seconds.
Okay, yes, of course, I would never, that's not exactly what I said. Of course, there are people and grown men, of course, that go through life that don't go to college and become successful. Is why I drive home entrepreneurship and business ownership so much. But if we're talking about data and statistically speaking, about 50% of Black men have been incarcerated by the time they turn 23 years old, which is astronomical compared to other demographics of people. So if we're going to, the numbers don't lie. And of course, I wish this weren't true, but those are actual true statistics.
All right, thank you. Ms. Cotterell, question to you, same question, what can we do to cut the toll of shootings and other violence?
I want to preface this with my dad was the chief in Midway at the same time that Sheriff Walt McNeil was the chief here in Tallahassee. And as his peer, they would often run things by each other and strategies. And my dad was very much into community policing and knew his community well. And I believe that Sheriff McNeil has highlighted an issue because it is getting out of control. And we as a community need to do something because we're losing our youth. And as Commissioner Proctor said, they're getting incarcerated at higher rates. And I attribute some of that to what I call the push out factor. We have had a historical Black community at the bottom of the hill of the Capitol that was pushed out. Several of those people were pushed into the Orange Avenue apartments. Orange Avenue apartments were 37% of the city of Tallahassee's low-income housing. Now those folks are displaced, have been pushed out into another community. Some are in neighborhoods that the conditions are even worse than where they came from. And we are constantly pushed out and moved around. You don't get to know your community. You don't know your neighbors. And you often can fall victim to crime because of the poverty, as Mr. Barber mentioned, but also not knowing your neighbors. Knowing your neighbors and getting to know those who are responsible for your safety and protection, meaning law enforcement, go hand in hand, because it's a lot easier to be able to call on law enforcement when you need help because you're not afraid of retaliation. So I look forward to working with Sheriff McNeil because he was a good friend of my dad's. And I believe that we as a county can strengthen our communities if we're looking at our neighbors and helping them to be involved with the community.
Ms. Ross, can I comment on that?
Sure, go ahead. 30 seconds.
This is a private exchange, this public housing, and I like what Ms. Cotterell said about the push out. But this is very similar to Black lives on a slave auction block being exchanged and pushed out, pushed around. And here we are in 2022, and Black lives by private investors are exchanging our lives, pushing us around. And it's almost like, what year is it? And that is the corollary function of poor people in housing. It goes all the way back from 1619 to right now, and got no control on where you sleep, where you live, and the factors which make difficult to come up for people. We're not paying attention. But this is the nature of District 1 and the challenges and how tentative our stability is. And I appreciate you allowing me to say that.
Thank you. We have 2 questions. So I think it looks like we've got one question from Melanie from the audience. So we're going to move to audience questions now. And if we don't have too many more, we might get 1 or 2 of my other questions. So if you haven't already done so, audience, please put your questions in the chat. If you want to ask your question live, make sure you use the raise hand function of Zoom, which is found on the bottom of your screen in the reactions button. Push reactions and the option to raise your hand will come up. If you want to ask a question, please turn on your cameras and allow video so that we can see you during this Q&A. Our moderators will unmute you. And please know that you have 1 minute to ask your question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. All right. Claudia Sperber, you will be next with your question.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Is my audio and visual working?
You got it, yes.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Proctor and Donna Pearl and Terrance Barber, thank you so much for joining us, for being here and to hear you. So my question first got inspired by the question about Doak Campbell Stadium and the funding earlier. And to broaden that out, my question to all of you is this: some residents are really concerned about the influence and the interaction of moneyed interests in Tallahassee and how that's interacting with our commissioners. One instance of that was about Doak, that some residents certainly felt concerned that there was too much influence by the boosters and by FSU, and how that shaped and influenced and interacted with our commissioners. And to expand that, not only Doak, but many are concerned that real estate developers are also having excessive influence on the outcomes of our commissioners' voting and our staff behaviors. So I'm wondering if any of you could comment on the influence of moneyed interests on how our commissioners and staff are operating these days, whether it's about Doak or about other points of concern.
All right, great. Let's start with Mr. Barber. Thank you.
To sum it up, of course there's influence. Wherever there's that sort of money involved, of course there'll be some sort of influence. Of course, developers are business people and smart business people. Most of them have done very well in their perspective field. Whenever you see an investor investing their dollars, which I describe developers as investors, investing their money into certain entities, certain candidates, certain whatever, they expect a return on their investment. I think that what folks outside of our community understand that the folks inside of our community may not be privy to is that a vote on this commission affects this entire county. So whenever you see developers funding campaigns that don't have developments within our district, I think that should pause and cause for question. Anytime that money is being spent or money is being invested by investors, by nature, they expect a return. So that sort of influence, I think, can sway or can make some of this political processes a bit absurd and unfair.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Ms. Cotterell next.
Yes, I'm sorry, Kim, could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, absolutely. I think the question, Claudia, you can nod if I get it right here, but is related to the concerns, comment on the concerns around developers in general and their influence on the county commission. Is that good for you there, Claudia?
Yes, or it could also be the influence of FSU and the FSU boosters in relation to the outcome of the Doak vote. So either way, the influence
in general, that influence.
Yeah, on either Doak or other concerns.
Thank you for the question, Claudia. And you're right, they do go hand in hand because we saw the boosters giving money to commissioners' campaigns that had a deciding factor in how that blueprint money was spent. And I will say that in terms of outside of a blueprint, Commissioner Proctor generally agrees with the Chamber of Commerce on issues that are related to land use that developers are interested in. And they are very much brick and mortar folks and strongly favor land development over environmental preservation. In 2005, Commissioner Proctor advocated for and worked with the property owner to help convince the county commission to support a highly controversial development of Falls Chase property. Soon after, there was a significant clear-cut forest. The forests were clear-cut to make way for Costco and Walmart and huge parking lot. And people said that the land instantaneously converted from a forest to a moonscape. We have to be very careful, as Mr. Barber said, about how these developers are using their money, power, and influence to affect our environment. And so it's not just the Doak vote, right, but it's other votes as well. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Proctor to respond to and answer the question around the influence of developers and the FSU boosters on the county commission.
not specifically aware of investors' influence on the county commission. Commissioner Dozier was against it. Again, I've always said from the giddy up that I favor FSU football because they support Black boys. So if investors like that idea that I have, more power to them. Moreover, on the FSU vote, it was about economic development. And of the penny sales tax that Ms. Cotterell has raised, 12% of that money was set for development, economic development, specifically for special projects. Florida State received in 2014, they received the vote of our community for $20 million, which would have been the Madison Mile project for Performing Arts Center. The cost of building exceeded $20 million for Performing Arts Center, which I'm sure Ms. Cotterell would have appreciated. So they asked after Florida University got $10 million, who was not voted on, they asked, could they use the $20 million instead for their stadium, just as we approved $10 million for Florida A&M Stadium. We had precedent had been established. We supported FAMU, who was not supported by the voters, and we gave them $10 million out of that 12% set aside. So I'm very pleased again with all that has been said. And yes, I negotiated the Falls Chase Development Agreement. It had been stale, couldn't be broken for 32 years. But I'm very, very skillful, capable. And today you have a place where people get checks from Costco, Walmart, Dollar Tree, with probably $1 million worth of
I'll
activity.
get you to wrap it up there, Commissioner Proctor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Got it. All right. So, so the next question is going to come from somebody who's on Facebook, and Ms. Cotterell, will go to you first. We hear a lot of "we need," but aren't you all campaigning to tell us what you plan to do to meet those needs? So think through where you've been saying what we need, and maybe speak a little bit of how you can address those needs through the county commission.
Absolutely. I am currently a grant writer. I've been a grants manager at the state level, and very familiar with federal grants and contracts that are available for home ownership and for preserving land. So I would bring that to the table and look at how we can access federal dollars as well as corporate funding to shore up our neighbors and to give them funding to either purchase homes or improve homes. We know here in Bond, we've had some funding, some grants for homeowners, but I also know how difficult it has been for some homeowners to get those grants, to get that funding. I'm more than happy to use my education and expertise to bring more federal funding into the county so that we can increase low-income and affordable housing. That's one of my solutions. I don't know if I have more time, but I would love to look at air property and how we can help those who, as Mr. Barber said, might not live here, but are willing to provide their land for affordable housing.
All right, thank you. We'll go to Commissioner Proctor next. Again, hearing that we have a lot of needs, but where you please let us know what you're going to do to address some of the needs that you feel like aren't being addressed at this point.
Very good. The 32304 initiative, for which both candidates, my opponents, have raised up, I actually have taken concrete steps, produced data. We have, was stopped by COVID in 2019. I had 4 community summits. Many of the stakeholders of our community were there. We're going to continue implementing the goals, initiatives of the 32304 Prosperity for All Summit, which was to address poverty. I believe that we, in terms of infrastructure, we've got to complete the expansion of Woodville Highway, the Capitol Circle, southwest over by the airport, all the way around the Highway 20. That has to occur. We've got to make sure that Spring Hill Road, as well as Orange Avenue, are addressed. Mr. Barber raised a great point about the Old Bainbridge Road from Thorpe Street coming up to Tennessee Street. And one of the reasons that was stopped was because it was not clear that on a Canopy Road, we were just going through the black neighborhood, creating a super highway, but nobody was willing to clear out the north side of Thorpe Street, going back over on the white side. So it was an issue. It was racial, it was culture. They wanted to clear out the Frenchtown side over by the cemetery, Greenwood, but they didn't want to touch the side where other homes were. And something about that didn't smell right, didn't seem right. So there are a number of projects that are ongoing. I have been the most prolific commissioner in the history of our community, city, or county. My record is great. The proof is in the pudding. When you say the word Bill Proctor, it stands for successful infrastructure.
All right.
It stands for who is good for the District 1, fault redlining, and so many other things. Thank you.
Commissioner Proctor, thank you. All right, y'all, let's try to keep it to 1 minute. Mr. Barber, you're next with how can we address some of the needs that you've identified if you were to get onto the county commission?
First, I want to interject that, like Mr. Proctor, I sit on what's called the Citizens Advisory Board, or for the Tallahassee Leon County Office of Economic Vitality. And what I do know to be true is that we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on what's called a disparity study to take a holistic approach of this county and city and see where the disparities are, hence the name disparity study. So I did sit in on, though this is an absolutely voluntary position. I don't receive a salary for it, but I do. My heart for this community calls me when Mr. Darrell Jones reached out to me to sit on this committee. I've sat on it for the last 4 years. So I know a lot of things that are going on. I know there has a study has been done. I take you back to what are some of the solutions. Our solutions, I would say, is we have to tap into the talent that we have at our universities. Why are we not leveraging that talent alongside our investments to these institutions of higher education? I applaud the fact that Ms. Cotterell says she's versed in grant writing. I also submit that we have 2 universities filled with people that are versed in grant writing. So we need to tap into those markets while we're investing in them as well.
Thank you.
Expect some sort of return.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, so we have one more question again from Facebook. Our folks have been monitoring how they've been coming in. So this is the next question. I believe it'll be our last question from the audience. And so we'll start with you, Commissioner Proctor. Do you support the county to raise awareness about air pollution and burning? That is an agenda item number 20 at the July 12th County Commission meeting. And then we'll also ask our candidates that as well. But go ahead, Commissioner Proctor.
The short version is yes. Thank you.
All right, short is great. How about, let's go to Ms. Cotterell.
Repeat the question again, please.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Do you support the county raising awareness about air pollution and burning? That is an agenda item number 20 at the July 12th County Commission meeting.
That's an absolute yes. I was at a city commissioners meeting where they were talking about you can burn in city limits up to 6 feet high, which I think is hazardous. And the pollution coming from the airport, and Mr. Proctor mentioned that as well. I think definitely we can do something about the emissions from the airport. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And finally, Mr. Barber, do you support the county raising awareness about air pollution and burning? That is an agenda item number 20 at the July 12th County Commission meeting.
Yes, I would support such an endeavor. That's my short answer.
All right, very good. So thank you, everyone. We did not have time to answer ask all the questions. Everyone has been great. We do have a final wrap-up question for our candidates. Feel free, our candidates hopefully will put their contact information and how to get involved in the chat. So you can also ask your questions by email to them. But one final question, short answer, 1 minute or less, around what is your biggest accomplishment? Mr. Barber, we will start with you. If you're elected to the county commissioner, when you look back at a few years from now, what do you hope will have been your biggest accomplishment, or your accomplishment that had the biggest positive effect on the residents of District 1? And if you can answer in 1 sentence, please.
Creating sustainable economies in our communities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Barber. Commissioner Proctor, you've represented District 1 on the County Commission for 26 years. What do you see as your accomplishment that has had the biggest positive effect on the residents of District 1? And answer in one sentence, please.
26 years, it could be surmised in one sentence.
What your biggest accomplishment, not all of them, your biggest accomplishment.
I don't have a biggest accomplishment. I have represented a consciousness. The biggest accomplishment is that I have brought to District 1 a consciousness that they are entitled to public service, public dollars, and public respect. I continue to raise that consciousness with a clear voice and continue to look in various segments of our community where support of the public is necessary and needed for equality to be achieved, as well as parity in our community. That
was an incredibly long sentence, Commissioner Proctor. All
26
right.
months.
Ms. Cotterell, you get the last word here from the candidates. If you're elected to the County Commission, when you look back a few years from now, what do you hope will have been your accomplishment that had the biggest positive effect on the residents of District 1? And again, answer in one sentence, please.
I hope that my biggest accomplishment is bringing creative arts, mainly theater arts, to the South Side with Indaba Theater. Indaba is a Zulu word for coming together for a meaning or a purpose. Our purpose is to inspire, empower, uplift, and to create healthy outlets of self-expression using theater as therapy to help people overcome obstacles in their life.
All right, that also was a really long sentence there. Thank you so much. All right, sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but we have run out of time. You've got the candidates' email addresses, and scroll to them if you want their information to get in contact. I would like to thank the candidates for participating, and thank you, our audience, for attending. Thank you so much. This has been our third Democratic Candidate Forum of 9 forums in our summer series, forums that are held every Saturday through August 13th for our important elections that occur during the primary election cycle on August 24th. We hope to see each and every one of you at each and every one. Thank you for sending your Saturday afternoon. We've got a couple of important announcements that are going to be presented now, so please stay on for a few more minutes. And thank you again.